When Shaquille O'Neal walked through the front door of Magnolia's kitchen on the morning of March the 14th, nobody looked up. That was exactly how he wanted it. He was wearing a gray hoodie, the one with the cracked drawstring and the small bleach stain near the left pocket that his assistant had tried to throw away twice. Dark jeans, white sneakers with no logo. A black baseball cap pulled low, no jewelry, no entourage, no security detail standing 2 steps behind him. He had driven himself. He had parked a block and a half away. He did this sometimes, when he needed to remember what a room felt like before it knew who he was. Magnolia's kitchen sat on the corner of Peachtree and Avondale in the part of Atlanta that was still figuring out whether it was being saved or erased. The booths were red vinyl patched with electrical tape. The counter stools wobbled. The kind of place where the pie was better than anything a food critic would ever find. Because food critics didn't come here. 4 NBA championships, 3 MVP awards, a net worth that had crossed $400 million before he was 40. One of the most recognized faces on earth. And he was sitting in a booth at Magnolia's kitchen, with his cap low and his hands folded on a table that had a crack running straight down the middle of it, waiting for someone to bring him a menu. That was when he noticed 3 things. First, the front door had a small brass bell above it, but the hook it hung from was bent at a 45-degree angle, the bell tilted sideways, not hanging straight. It had been that way for a while. Someone had tried to fix it and stopped. Second, there was a child's drawing taped to the inside of the hostess station window. Crayon on construction paper, a sun, a house. 2 stick figures, one very tall and one very small, with the words "Me and Mommy" written in shaky red letters underneath. Third, from somewhere beyond the swinging kitchen door, through the sound of the grill and the coffee machine and the low morning chatter of the room, there was a voice. Small, steady, singing something without any melody to it, more like a rhythm than a song. It stopped. It started again. Stopped. And from the direction of that sound, through the seam of the kitchen door, he could see the corner of a small sneaker. Pink. Canvas. Too small to belong to anyone who worked there. He noted all 3 of these things. He said nothing. He kept his hands folded on the cracked table, and he waited. Now here is the part that no one in that room understood yet. There was a secret Shaquille O'Neal had been carrying for 14 months. A secret that connected everyone in that building to each other in a way that none of them had any reason to suspect. The waitress who was about to walk over to his table was carrying her own secret. And those 2 secrets were not separate. They were the same secret, approached from opposite ends of a very long hallway. You are not going to see this ending coming. Stay with us for the entire video, because what happened in this room on that Tuesday morning changed 6 lives permanently, and one of them was someone nobody in that building had thought about in a long time, and who had nothing to do with breakfast, and who had been gone for 11 years. Shaquille O'Neal was born in Newark, New Jersey, in the winter of 1972. And Newark in the winter is not a gentle place. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, was 21 years old and not quite 5 feet 3 inches tall, and she had the kind of quiet iron inside her that does not announce itself until it is tested. She kept a clean house in a loud neighborhood, and she never let him go to sleep without telling him 2 things: that she saw him, and that she expected him to see other people back. Not perform seeing them. Actually look. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, was an Army sergeant who used discipline the way some people use language, as the primary means of communicating that he cared. Philip had one rule he said so often, it stopped being a sentence and became weather. Don't be a reaction. Be a response. He said it after arguments. He said it after games lost and games won. He said it the morning Shaq left for LSU with 2 bags and a pair of sneakers that were already too small. He said it on the phone 3 weeks before he died. Philip Harrison had been gone for 11 years, and sometimes Shaq heard his voice so clearly in the middle of silence that he turned around to check. The rise was fast by any measure and remarkable by all of them. Number 1 overall pick, Rookie of the Year. 3 consecutive championships in Los Angeles, a 4th in Miami, a television career, a business portfolio that had expanded in 47 different directions since the last time he played a professional game, including 14 months ago, a quiet acquisition, handled through 3 layers of holding companies, of a 72% stake in a small Atlanta restaurant group called Magnolia Hospitality, LLC. 3 locations: the flagship, Magnolia's Kitchen, corner of Peachtree and Avondale. He had not told anyone he was coming this morning. He had not called ahead. He had driven himself down Peachtree in a car that cost more than the building he was sitting in, parked a block and a half away, and walked through the front door in a gray hoodie with a bleach stain near the pocket, because he needed to see the room before the room knew who he was. Her name was Karen Briggs. She had worked at Magnolia's Kitchen for 9 years and 4 months, and she had grown up in Macon, Georgia, 60 miles south of Atlanta, the youngest of 4 daughters, in a household where the electricity was a negotiation and dinner was a conversation about what was in the cabinet. She had wanted to be a nurse, not in the vague way that children want things, specifically with research. She had studied the NCLEX prep books at the public library in Macon for 2 years while she was waiting tables at a Waffle House. She had submitted applications to 3 nursing programs. She had been waitlisted at 1, rejected by 2, and by the time a spot opened at the one that waitlisted her, her mother had gotten sick, and there was no longer a version of her life in which she could leave Macon for 2 years. That was 19 years ago. She had moved to Atlanta 8 years after that, following a man whose last name she no longer used. And she had found work at Magnolia's, and she had stayed. The way you stay somewhere when staying is the one thing that costs the least. She was 47 years old. She was 1 missed shift from her rent being a problem. She had not slept well in 4 days. The morning of March the 14th, she had woken up at 5:15 to a text from her landlord that she had read 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. And she had driven to work in a car with a check engine light that had been on since November. When she walked through the employee entrance at 6:45 a.m., she had been awake for 2.5 hours, and she already felt the particular exhaustion of a person who has been doing the math for so long that the numbers have stopped meaning anything. She said the words before she fully decided to say them. The second they left her mouth, she knew. He had been sitting in booth 7 for 6 minutes. He had not been greeted. He had seen 2 tables seated after him, a couple near the window, a woman in a blazer working on a laptop, both of whom received water and menus within 3 minutes. He did not flag anyone down. He waited. And when Karen Briggs finally appeared at the edge of his booth, she looked at him the way you look at something you have already categorized before you fully examined it. "You're going to need to move on," she said. "This isn't that kind of place." He looked up at her. He said nothing. "I said we're not serving walk-ins right now." She did not look at her notepad. She had not brought her notepad. "There's a McDonald's 2 blocks east." Around them, the room continued. Forks moved, coffee cups moved. The couple near the window discussed something with their heads close together. Except for Marcus Webb. Marcus was 23 years old and had been working the counter at Magnolia's for 14 months. Hired 2 weeks after the ownership transfer, though he didn't know the details of who had actually signed the paperwork. He was saving money for his mother's medical bills and taking business classes at night and he wore the same pair of black non-slip shoes every shift because he had not yet gotten around to buying a second pair. He was refilling the syrup dispensers at the counter when Karen said what she said. He set the syrup bottle down. He looked at booth 7. He looked at the man in the gray hoodie, and something shifted in his face. Not recognition, not quite, but something in the neighborhood of it. "Ma'am," he said from the counter. She turned. "I'll take that table," he said. "Marcus, I'll take it." He was already walking. He was already pulling out his pad. In the booth behind and to the left of booth 7, a woman named Doris Fletcher had been sitting with her coffee and her Bible study notes for 40 minutes. She was 69 years old, retired from 31 years of teaching 5th grade at a public school 4 blocks from where she was sitting. She had seen what she had seen. She had not said anything yet. She had one hand wrapped around her coffee cup and her reading glasses pushed up on top of her head, and she was watching the room. The way retired teachers watch rooms, like someone who has learned over a very long time that what happens next depends entirely on who decides to do something. Marcus put the menu on the table. He filled the water glass. He introduced himself by name. "Can I get you started with anything while you look?" he said. The man in the gray hoodie looked at him for a moment. "You know who I am," he said. It was not a question. "I do," Marcus said, "and you haven't been treated right this morning. I'm sorry about that. Let me fix it." From across the restaurant, Karen was watching. Something moved behind her eyes. Not quite shame and not quite panic, but living uncomfortably close to both. The couple by the window had stopped talking. The woman with the laptop had looked up. "You're going to have to wait just a little longer for the ending," the narrator says, "because before you hear what he said next, you need to understand one more thing about this room and about that child's drawing in the hostess window and about the small pink sneaker you heard singing on the other side of the kitchen door." Her name was Amara. She was 6 years old, and she had been in that kitchen since 6:30 in the morning because her mother had no one to leave her with, and the choice had been bring her or miss the shift. She sat on a step stool behind the prep station with a coloring book and a cup of apple juice, and she sang the way children sing when they are not performing for anyone, without melody, without self-consciousness, just sound filling space, because silence felt empty. She had drawn the picture in the hostess window 6 weeks ago. The tall stick figure was not her father. Her father had been out of the picture for 4 years. The tall stick figure was Doris Fletcher, her downstairs neighbor, who had watched her twice a week for the last year and a half, while her mother worked double shifts, and who called her baby girl and smelled like lavender hand cream. Her mother was Karen Briggs. The room had gone very quiet by the time Shaquille O'Neal stood up from booth 7. He did not raise his voice. He did not make a speech. He straightened to his full height, 7 feet 1 inch of him filling the space between the table and the ceiling fan, and he walked slowly to the hostess station. He reached into the inner pocket of the gray hoodie, and he took out a folded piece of paper, and he unfolded it once and set it on the counter. It was a document, 2 pages. His name was on it. "I'd like to speak to whoever's in charge," he said, to no one in particular. And then Karen Briggs said, from across the room, in a voice that had gone very small, That's you." He turned. She was standing very still. She had looked at the document. The color had gone out of her face. "You own this place," she said. She wasn't asking. "You've owned it for 14 months, he said. In the booth behind him, Doris Fletcher set down her coffee cup, slowly, with both hands. The kitchen door pushed open, and Amara appeared in it, coloring book under one arm, the small pink canvas sneakers on her feet. She looked at the room. She looked at the very tall man standing at the hostess counter. She looked at her mother. She said, "Mama, is it time to go?" Karen Briggs put one hand over her mouth. Here is what Shaquille O'Neal did not do. He did not fire her. He did not humiliate her. He did not deliver a speech about respect or recognition or the wages of assumption. He pulled a chair from the nearest empty table, and he sat down so that he was approximately at eye level with a 6-year-old girl in pink canvas sneakers, and he said, "You the one who was singing back there?" Amara studied him. "Yes." "You're good," he said. He looked up at Karen. "Your daughter needs to be in school," he said, not with anger, with the flat, clear tone of a person stating a fact that has a solution. "I'm going to make sure that's possible." He stood. He handed Marcus Webb a business card, not his own, but one with a name and a number written on the back in his handwriting. "That's my Education Foundation's coordinator," he said. "You call them tomorrow. We're covering your night school, all of it. Finish what you started." Marcus looked at the card for a long moment. He nodded once. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you," Shaq said, "for doing your job." And then he did the last thing. He walked back to booth 7, picked up the folded document from the counter, and walked it to Karen Briggs. He held it out. She took it. Her hands were not steady. "I'm not here to take this from you," he said. "I'm here because my stepfather used to say that you don't know a room until you sit in it without anyone knowing your name." He paused. He was right. This room is good. The pie is probably good. The service, a pause, the smallest possible, has some room to grow. Karen Briggs looked at the document in her hands. She looked at her daughter in the kitchen doorway. She looked at the man who had just handed her back the paper instead of the consequence. "You're going to enroll in that nursing program," he said. "That's not a question. I have a foundation. That's what it does. You have until the end of this week to decide if you want that call to happen." He picked up his cap from the table. He adjusted the brim. "And get someone to fix that bell above the door. It's been crooked since at least November." Doris Fletcher stood up from her booth. She was 69 years old, and she had watched 31 years of children learn things they didn't know they needed to learn. And she recognized this moment for exactly what it was. She walked to the hostess station, and she picked up Amara's crayon drawing from the inside of the window. The sun, the house, the 2 stick figures. And she held it up so the girl could see it from the kitchen doorway. "That's you and me, baby girl," she said. Amara said, "I know, Miss Doris." Philip Harrison had been right. Don't be a reaction. Be a response. Shaq had been carrying that instruction for 11 years, in the particular way you carry something from a person who is gone. Not like luggage, but like weather. It had been there in the parking lot when he decided to park a block and a half away. It had been there at the table when he sat and waited instead of signaling. It had been there in his hands when he unfolded the document and set it on the counter without raising his voice. It was there in his pocket, in the form of a business card with a phone number on the back, when he buttoned the gray hoodie and walked toward the door with the tilted bell. He straightened the bell as he left. It rang once, clear and clean, as the door closed behind him. A waitress named Karen Briggs learned that the room she had worked in for 9 years belonged to the man she had told to leave it, and then learned that knowing that was not the worst part. The worst part, and the part she would spend a long time with, was the question of who she had been in the room before she knew. A 23-year-old named Marcus Webb called a phone number the next morning and started a conversation that ended 14 months later with a degree and a general manager position at the second Magnolia's location. A retired school teacher named Doris Fletcher drove Amara to school every morning for the next 2 years, while her mother attended classes 3 evenings a week. And she called her baby girl every single morning, and the girl never stopped thinking it was the best thing anyone could call you. And somewhere in the back of the kitchen of a restaurant on the corner of Peachtree and Avondale, there was a step stool and a coloring book and a cup that had held apple juice, and a small pair of pink canvas sneakers that had carried a 6-year-old girl through a morning she would not fully understand until she was old enough to tell it to someone else. Don't be a reaction. Be a response. He never needed them to know his name first, and neither should you. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from, because people in this community are watching from places that would shock you, and we want to know. If this story hit you the way it's hitting everyone else who's seen it, tap that like button, not for the algorithm, for every person who has ever been told to move on from something they already owned. Subscribe if you haven't, because this is a community that shows up for stories that actually matter. The next video is going to be even harder to stop watching. We will see you there.